welcome to here. As the intended audience of this video already knows, I'm Blaze Creek, the founder of the communities this channel represents, and the leader, or at least public face, of the Hapus and Abyssals. Now, I think I owe y'all an apology. We've missed a lot of the Poicasts in recent memory, mainly due to my real life being more chaotic than usual lately. So I'm sorry we've been missing them. I know it sucks, and I know a lot of people have been wanting to either go back to the old format or update things to be better than the old ways, which, to be fair, I agree with. Our media team, Abyssal Media Group, led by Cypher, will be hosting pretty much any podcast that I can't going forward, which, yes, Cypher is now in charge of our media team. We're not going to do any votes around it, as AMG technically falls under all of our communities. It's a very important part of our future that isn't directly tied down to a singular of our communities, rather they serve the ecosystem as a whole. Now, their team and operations are being hosted in Abyssal Order's staff Discord. That way, Lang and I can help them out quicker, easier, and help encourage, I guess you could say, some interest in them to also make content for Massive Loop, since they're largely going to be making VR chat related content for Foundation and APD. Now, Cypher and Agent will be given access to our social media accounts. That way they can post, pictures from raids or events along with new videos. Think of them as our social media, managers, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Even though Cypher is in charge, Agent's going to be helping out. So anything related to the media team will generally be their department. Now, whether that's something like making new videos with the community or posting screenshots, archiving, our fun times. A large aspect of why I wanted to have a media team or even do, social media excuse me, is for archiving what we do and the good times that we share. So I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot more in general from Hapus online. I'd like to have a Hapu presence online outside of our normal, circles or spheres. So that'd be cool. But moving on, let's talk about worlds. Let's pull that up a little bit better. We've got several in development for all of our groups. Now that my IRL situation has improved, I'm once again able to make meaningful progress on projects that I'm overseeing. So we're going to start with Foundation. The main world, the main avatar world specifically, is still getting an update, 3 technically. The current version we use for PC rating will be updated with new avatars, islands, and other major changes. Or excuse me, minor changes, not major. That doesn't happen to that one. The avatar world we nicknamed Purple will be updated as well. It's basically the one before the one that we use. But yeah, that'll be updated. Defunct islands will be removed. I'm unsure if we'll do like a proper update or not. I've been thinking about keeping it just as an archive instead of making it completely raid usable, but last but not least, Avatar World B. What would have been the updated Avatar World, as previously mentioned during Poicasts and so on. That world is being converted to a cross-communal hub to represent all 4 of our communities. Now, it will have an Avatar Island and, it will have Avatar Islands and a conversion island, but it isn't intended as an Avatar world or for regular use as a raiding world. It's more like a proper communal hub than anything. So that does leave the door open for an actual remake of the primary Avatar world down the line, after our current plans are sorted out, which will likely occur before the end of the year. But I know that's something that I made a pretty big deal, and I do want to have a remake of the world done. I'm just trying to keep things realistic. So, there had been an effort made to create a new Avatar world by one of our creators, which might bear fruit eventually. It'd be super cool to see their interpretation brought to life for the Poyos to explore and use. But don't hold your breath. It'd be awesome to see. Hopefully it happens. Now, the media team is also working on a new world to host their activities in, overseen and headed by Cypher, of course. I don't have much to report right now, but it's in progress, and I'm hyped for it. As for the APD, there's a little bit. As for the APD, they've been working hard to recover and rebuild their worlds. You know, they've made stellar progress with getting their homeworld operational again, and overall they've done a great job after having lost so much to a rogue developer. I won't go into specifics about world development with APD until at least the next Poicast. That way Lang can tell y'all everything that's going on himself, since he has more information about the APD side of development than I do. So, you know. As for Fellowship of Null, they're working on rebuilding their worlds as well. Same with avatars. I don't have any new information to bring up about it though. Hopefully next Poicast I'll have an update for y'all on how that's going. Just, we're still working on the lines of communication between some of our groups, so there's still some work to be done there. As for Abyssal Order, I've been shuffling around what takes priority. The cross-communal hub we made from Foundation's Avatar World B is planned to be added to our server on Massive Loop as well. The newest version of our Avatar World from Foundation will be worked into, or rather reworked into, for use as our primary world for Abyssal Order. It'll be diverging a bit from previous iterations, but, you know. A Hapu Hangout, either Jarno's version or my own version. A dev sandbox for testing, and the Media World once Cypher has finished it. Originally, I had planned on archiving all of our existing Avatar worlds, but that kind of doesn't really make sense to me. It's a lot of work for something that you can already experience on VRChat, and it isn't immediately relevant to Abyssal Order. So anyway, we'll eventually start working on roleplay specific worlds. We just need to get the baselines established and go from there. But yeah, so lots of world stuff for Abyssal Order that's still needing to be finished, but we're working on it. Now we've got plenty of other stuff to talk about too. I just wanted to start with world stuff since, you know, it's been a recurring theme in recent memory, and, you know, there is a lot to cover though. Before we continue, this isn't going to be the final format for how the mini Poicast is handled. I have a properly structured format I've been working on, but it isn't ready to be, you know, used yet. So things might be a bit unstructured or messy the first time around, but, you know, regardless, let's talk about rules next. So all of our communities will have minor additions to their rules, or at least the primary communities. The first community to be affected is Hapu Foundation, but eventually all of our groups will adopt the same or similar rules. Now, as of the release of this video, voting is in progress within leadership and will be in the general staff vote on the 29th. They're mostly clarifications, alterations, or a few new additions. Nothing too crazy, but since it's still in our internal vote, you'll have to wait a few days until it ends up on the community vote. But if you're staff, you'll know what the deal is pretty quick. But I'd spent quite a long time earlier in the year working on Abyssal Order's rules and TOS. Originally, it was planned that it'd act as an extension of all of our group's rules that ended up being fought internally pretty hard. On a few occasions, which is kind of the main reason why we haven't been doing rule additions or alterations for any of our communities lately. It's still largely work in progress, and I have plans on finishing all of AO's documentation. Whenever, you know, AO's TOS is in a more fleshed out and finished state, we'll either make it an addition to our existing rules or adopt it as our baseline rules across all of our groups. It's essentially intended as a more comprehensive list of rules and associated explanations, along with serving as a TOS of sorts. But it acts largely more like an actual TOS than a Discord rule set, which heavily turned off a lot of people during early testing. But if we decide to eventually adopt the finished version globally, you know, awesome. If not, it'll still serve as AO's rules/TOS, and no matter what, aspects will be adopted to existing communal rules across the Abyss. So it'll get worked out. But yeah, I totally get why there were some issues with it though. I feel that it's an entirely fair document, which makes complete sense for us to continue developing and eventually adopt, but I totally understand the concerns that were brought up when it was still a notable conversation topic. You know, there was quite a bit of concern that we were becoming too corporate, that it was too restrictive, or just too much coverage. Some of our staff-related actions and proposed documentation during that time were also largely misunderstood. So, you know, I wanted to start commissioning our creators on a larger scale by creating a few contracts for specific worlds and avatar concepts to be developed into tangible places or avatars that we could use for roleplay by some of our really well-known creators. Now, this also extended to our own website and a new freely downloadable Hapu and Abyssal base, made in the vision of our communal lore. We were playing around with one-off shirts or stickers to give to friends or to give away, since one of us was working somewhere that let them create stuff like that. So like Hapus do, we made some cool stuff with our logos, but some people misunderstood that as something far more capitalist, when we were just making personal Hapu stuff through a friend, whether to give away internally or to just have for ourselves. But I guess it happens. Let's see. But yeah, during this time, a lot of different things were going on that just wasn't great, or were being misunderstood or misinterpreted. And that's for a few reasons. During this time, we also had multiple hostile communities, which won't be named publicly, and a few disgruntled staff members or former staff members attempt to take advantage of our chaotic era, primarily by influencing or exacerbating aforementioned issues. You know, there were multiple nukes that went off in both Hapu Foundation and APD staff teams. We had vultures poking at our wounds for months. It was hell. But that's all ancient history by this point. I think when you mixed all of those things together in a very close time frame, it makes sense why we encountered the kind of issues and at the scale that we did. But, you know, let me be clear. We will never exploit or use the Hapus for profit. You know, we've had the passing thought to form an official nonprofit organization or a company to handle anything that doesn't involve, or anything that does involve money or legal stuff like contracts. But obviously we're not going to do that. It's an option that we now fully understand, but I don't intend on following through with. As always, we're heavily against selling stuff, making money off of Hapus, or making things more corporate in general. I fucking hate corpos. Fun fact, I'm a libertarian socialist, essentially a modern anarchist. I fucking hate companies and corporations, so you can imagine how much it bothered me being accused of capitalist intentions, to put it, I guess, lightly. We briefly wanted to explore different ways to protect our communities and myself from a legal standpoint. Creating an entity specifically for those concerns is surprisingly common, even among VRC groups. There are a few examples that I doubt are publicly known about at all, but we're normally more transparent than most groups about what we're thinking or, you know, what we're gonna do. We still wouldn't be making any money, even if, you know, if anything, I'd be operating at an even higher loss. And I operate our communities at an already decent monthly personal cost, since I don't accept money from our staff members or our groups. Any money that goes into our groups comes directly from me, or in the extremely rare exception, such as leadership. And we also get a small amount of funding by supporting different VR projects. Now, our largest monthly costs are Discord bots, our server box, a few services similar to Creately, including Creately, for project management and group development. Our special projects, contests, and commissioned pieces are also usually very expensive. I'm not going to say how much everything costs combined, but I wanted to clarify everything a bit better since there was still some confusion floating around. Nobody makes any money, or ever intends to. Our groups operate at a loss, and it'll always be that way. We're a nonprofit, or we're as nonprofit as it gets when it comes to a virtual community, and those we commission, people who participate in a contest or a giveaway, are the only people making a profit, and it'll always be that way. And this is our passion, you know? We never want to abuse or exploit something that brings so many people together. Hapus, Abyssals, these are very special concepts with a culture unlike anything else. There isn't anything comparable to what we've cultivated here. We are a living, breathing story in virtual reality's ever-expanding tale. Our incredibly diverse ecosystem of communities stands not only as a bastion of how things should be done, There truly isn't a personality as bright or blazing, I guess you could say, than a Hapu or an Abyssals. We've made something truly incredible, with amazing people, filled to the brim with so many friends, so many awesome people I would have never met otherwise. Our priority will always be to safeguard and cherish the safe spaces we've established across the virtual realm. Our abyss will always remain a janky hive mind under my guidance and vision that, while occasionally bumpy or confusing, always perseveres, and our leadership will always obviously uphold our core values regardless of whatever we encounter or the janky shit show that is virtual reality. Hapu isn't some commodity or resource to be exploited. We've made that very clear over the last 4 years. Now, moving on. Hapu Foundation and APD will both have a booth at Project Community's upcoming event, or I guess you'd call it an event. As many of you know, this is something we've done previously with VRCon, and they're extremely similar concepts. We won't be participating in any advertising campaigns or hosting events outside of what our communities regularly do, like we won't be hosting events for them. But we are planning on hosting cross-communal events with multiple friendly communities, which we're still talking about. Don't ask me about it, because I'm just not going to answer. So anyway, we've always hated advertising our existence outside of our usual activities and the few mediums that we do tend to post on. But we love exploring and, well, supporting other communities when we feel it's appropriate. So it felt like, we could excuse that aversion a bit, so we could participate and have some fun, make some new friends, and hopefully see some old ones too. But I'm not going to talk about it too much or show off our booths yet. That can wait another week or two. I think another week or two. Now, we have been talking with other roleplay communities about potentially hosting cross-communal events. This would be with very specific groups that we already have an established relationship and mutual respect with. So please don't take this as a sign to message me about setting up cross-communal events, as we are still extremely isolationist. Sometimes things just work out and make sense, but forced interactions aren't of any interest to me. Now, you can find our official stance on other communities in Abyssal Order's TOS Section 7. This is the formal policy which all of our communities observe and outlines our reasonings. Basically, our whole stance on other communities, how we interact, all that stuff. Overall, a large focus of my recent efforts have been on documentation, lore, worlds, developing our infrastructure, AO staff situation, our direction as an organization of communities, each community's individual direction, purpose, lore, staff, and activity infrastructure, Abyssal roleplay, our kingdom system for our roleplay, which cemented how the Abyss functions. We've been doing a lot of figuring out our baselines that were either things we didn't need at the time or that we never considered or encountered. We run 4 communities, our largest having over 5,000 members with hundreds of active members. We're essentially multiple big friend groups split into sub-friend groups, split into even more friend groups. We exist similar to kingdoms, tribes, or cults. There is quite literally nothing in real life or on the internet that comes close to the ecosystem or the culture that we've gradually developed within our communities. And it's quite amazing, really. Anyway, we do encounter and deal with quite a bit of shit that people would never consider. Our largest community is a staff team of over 50 people to help maintain and run everything. It's a miracle that we keep things together as well as we have when you consider all of the factors that go into keeping projects of love like ours going. The amount of time, effort, and emotional energy spent on them daily is beyond words, and to say that I appreciate everyone helping our group stay afloat would be an understatement. Without our incredible leadership and our amazing staff, we wouldn't be here doing what we do. And the people wouldn't get to enjoy our groups. People wouldn't get to enjoy a safe or respectable Hapu experience. I owe y'all a lot. Hapu's helped me more than I could ever express, and the fact that so many of you choose to do the same for your fellow Poyos makes me, well, beyond happy. I could never thank everyone who helps out enough. But thank you guys. We get to share and create awesome memories, have fun experiences, all while sharing in the culture that we all help to create. As a collective, we spread and share our friendship by converting new people into our hive mind. You know, I've met most of my friends from our groups, and pretty much all of my close friends are either directly or indirectly related to all this. So without y'all, I wouldn't have met all these incredible people that I get to call my friends, or that I get to see and spend time with every day. But I guess final statements. We're working on how we operate internally. We primarily use Discord for the majority of our organizational systems and communication structure, which isn't efficient at all when you operate at our scale. This is another reason why we haven't made much progress lately, as I've been figuring out how to convert a lot of what we do and what we have or need to a primarily cloud-based operation. Stuff like planning, managing projects, or our social media, world development, our to-do list, all that stuff. More stuff that'll, in some cases, cost me more money or be seen as potentially corporate behavior, but absolutely are needed for the sheer scale of our groups. We operate kind of like several different things combined together, as we don't exclusively operate in a single activity or thing. We host countless different activities and provide even more outlets for people to express themselves. Our groups, staff teams, are split into several teams covering different topics, as we're involved in quite a few areas across all of our groups and projects. We're very similar to the old school mega clans, if you will, kind of like AOD, Angels of Death. We usually expand into fields that we personally enjoy, which has caused us to be interested in more topics that I could reasonably list. And we're also multi-platform. There's Discord, VRChat, and Massive Loop. All of our groups are dedicated to at least 2 out of 3 of those topics, and they're all doing very different things as groups, despite our shared baselines. It's all a lot to keep in mind and manage, so we've been trying to make everything more cohesive and coherent with our backend. Now, the automated Poi motion system and the normal Poi motion system for Foundation are both being updated. Assuming everything passes the vote when the time comes, we will have multiple new seniority roles and a reworked system. It's a lot more fair than the current one, and I think it's probably the best I'm gonna get. Because I've reworked that system a lot, and I think this is going to be the final version. There are also updates that are still pending to Foundation. We will be cleaning up the Discord layout a bit when we have the time. Forums are planned to be used quite a bit more than they currently are, as not only do I love forums, it makes everything way cleaner and more organized. We will also start using the events feature on Discord. I like all of our recurring events to be always on the event schedule as soon as our raid/event schedule is updated. It's time we adopted this feature and used it fully, so we'll be making preparations to do so soon. Now, we also still need to acquire basic informational and financial records from Massive Loop and Resonant for our Hunting Grounds informational dockets about the VR platforms we officially recognize. Currently, we have CVR and VRChat, but we still need to hit them up, and we'll get to that at some point, but it's not a priority. What else? We still need to finish the first part of our roadmap and make it public. We're pretty behind on that, but we're pretty fluid on development, so the roadmap kind of doesn't really make sense. We need to finish up setting Blazebot, Langbot, and DJ Steve. That's on my to-do list, but we'll get those 3 bots finished and back up and running in the case of Blazebot. It's just a matter of finding enough time to get it all sorted out. We need to finish Abyssal Order's staff Discord and work out their staff situation. We need to finish Abyssal Order's work in progress sections and documentation. We need to add several sections to Abyssal Order to accommodate Abyssal Roleplay, our Kingdom system, and the rest of our RP and informational elements. We need to catch up on Foundation and AO's backlog, which has been happening. We haven't piled on any new tasks for a hot minute. Obviously, there's a lot missing from this mini Poicast. There are countless subjects which aren't covered. Pacing, runtime, and subject matter will, of course, be heavily improved on the next episode. What I've mentioned are either the most recurring subjects in recent memory or the things that I felt should be cleared up. But yeah, our next full Poicast will fill in any blanks, and the next mini Poicast will touch on anything that we've missed on top of new stuff. So these will be bi-weekly, as will the Poicast be going forward. This is largely so I can focus on developing our communities with less time restraints, and so I can create higher quality content that, can actually be released instead of being stuck in development hell. There's always a lot going on with our groups, and we've missed quite a few Poicasts, so there's a lot of catching up to do. But with all that said, all future Poicasts and mini Poicasts will be uploaded to the Abyssal Ecosystem YouTube channel. I've needed to burp for like 5 minutes. Oh my god. Now, I don't want this to run on too long. They're going to run on average 20 to 40 minutes, depending on how heavy they are, based on the format that I've been working out. So these should be a much easier way for people to keep track of what's going on and what we're doing, since the Poicast is often very long and disjointed, which will also be resolved in the very near future, with our media team becoming more involved. So with all that said, I think it's time I take my leave. I appreciate everybody for making it this far and watching the video. As always, I'm Blaze Creek, founder of our groups and leader of the Hapus at Abyssals. I'm tired, and thank you for taking the time to watch this, and I'll see you guys later, whether that's at one of our activities during the next Poicast or maybe even on Massive Loop. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys around.